The main event down at Charlestown on Saturday afternoon was the Grade 2 Charlestown Classic. $1.2 million was the purse. Let's take a look at this field, a field of 7. It wasn't the largest field assembled, but it was an interesting race. You could go a number of ways in here. The betting public ultimately landed on Diversify at odds of 6-5, a Grade 1 winner last year in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, but then you had some other legitimate contenders, including War Story, who was a good third in this race last year. Would he be able to turn the tables and get the job done this time around? We'll find out. Here's the stretch run of the Charlestown Classic.
To the inside, it's a Fleet Willie. War Story in between, Something Awesome, and Fear the Cowboy down the outside. Coming to the 16th pole, War Story has his nose in front. Something Awesome, Fear the Cowboy. War Story, Something Awesome, Something Awesome.
Something Awesome gets the job done in the Charlestown Classic. Pays $20.60 as a 9-1 shot. War Story, the second choice at 7-5, runs second, and Fear the Cowboy, coming from off the pace a little bit, and we'll talk about his trip more, runs third at odds of 9-1. Let's take a look a little bit more in depth at the winner, Something Awesome. He is 9 of 24 lifetime. He has over $1 million in career earnings now. Owned by Stronach Stables, trained by Jose Corrales, bred by Adena Springs in Ontario. He's a Canadian bred, ridden to victory by Edgar Prado. And the pedigree at the bottom of the page on the horse card, you can see he is by Awesome again out of a dance floor mare named Something About Laura. 101 Beyer speed figure for Something Awesome. 127 time form U.S. rating. Came home in 12:84. This was an impressive effort, all things considered. I like the way that he moved. This is a horse that has some versatility and some adaptability. Depending on if they go fast, he can come from off of it, and if they go slow, he can go out there and be forwardly placed. It's worth noting Timeform US has that interior fraction, the half-mile split color-coded blue, meaning it probably helped horses that were a little bit more forwardly placed, but this is going to be one of those rare instances where I don't know that that's necessarily the case, because you look and see the overall sort of final running lines for everyone, where the leaders or the forwardly placed horses ended up. They ended up toward middle, toward rear, and you had the horses that were sitting mid-pack or even farther back making that move and coming up and finish first, second, and third. So I don't know that necessarily just because that middle fraction is color-coded blue, meaning it was slow, I don't know that that necessarily means that the flow of the race was indicative of that. So that's something that you want to file away. And again, as good as all of these things are as far as handicapping is concerned, little things to use, you have to do the job yourself. You can't just rely on numbers and just say, oh, well, this is it. You got to synthesize it all, put it all together, and try to figure out, you know, make heads or tails or whatever the situation is. So something to keep an eye on going forward. Something Awesome. I thought this was a really good effort. Like I said, he has that versatility. Very, very important. The connections were thrilled, obviously, to win a race like this. And it sounds like the next race that would be in play for him would be the Pimlico Special on Preakness weekend at Pimlico Racecourse in Baltimore, Maryland. No reason not to. This horse is in raging form. 3 starts back, he won the General George at Laurel in the midst of a blizzard. 2 starts back, he wins a $100,000 stakes race going 1 mile and an eighth, and then he comes back here and wins the Charlestown Classic at 1 mile and an eighth going 3 turns. You never know about the 3 turns until they do it, so it's always nice to see this. Good effort from this horse. I think he's blue collar. Would certainly have to consider him depending on what the field looks like, but thought this was a very good effort, all things considered, from the winner, Something Awesome. War Story, a good effort from him as well. I think it was a tough position. Jorge Navarro mentioned that he wished that their horse was on the outside in the midst of that long stretch battle because he thinks that possibly that could have turned the tables. I'm not going to disagree. I think that's certainly something that you had to factor in. I thought it was a good effort, all things considered. A 100 Beyer, a 126 time form U.S. rating. He makes a lot of sense in a number of these races, and it sounds like he'll be pointing to the Brooklyn, a race that he won last year. That's going to be on the Belmont Stakes undercard at 1.5 miles at Old Big Sandy, Belmont Park. Let's talk about a couple other runners coming out of this race. Fear the Cowboy. I thought Fear the Cowboy, he may have had the worst go of it as far as trip is concerned because he had to angle out. He got shuffled a little bit when Diversify was dropping anchor as badly as he was on that third turn. He had to angle out, come with a little bit of a run. He finished very, very well. He actually had the fastest final eighth in the race in 12:42. He's the kind of horse I think is better suited for the more conventional track and the more conventional trip. You know, whether it is 1 mile and an eighth or 1 mile and 3/16 or anything like that, I think that's certainly a spot where he is more suited because I don't know. Maybe this is just my opinion. I don't think there's anything really to back this up one way or the other. Certain horses, I think, just get around those bull rings a little bit better than others. And this horse really extended as he got down the lane. Didn't help that he got that shuffle on that far turn, but I thought it was a good effort. And this horse, he picks up and runs wherever he shows up. If it's in Texas, if it's in Florida, if it's in California, he comes with a run. Doesn't matter. West Virginia here on Saturday afternoon. They will consider the Pimlico Special for him, but it might be a little bit of a quick turnaround with all of the travel that he's done here in 2018 already and the end of 2017. Two other horses to consider. I believe a Fleet Willie is a horse that you might want to throw in your DRF horse watch, because if you look again at the flow of this race, Diversify finished last. He was being pushed basically the entire way, or stalked the entire way, by a Fleet Willie. A Fleet Willie was really game to he finished fourth, but he was only beaten by a little bit more than a length and a half or 2 lengths. I thought this was a really, really strong effort from him, and I like the fact that, again, he's another versatile one. He can win going 7/8, he can win going a mile and an eighth, he can win going 1 turn, 2 turns, doesn't matter, and he can work out different trips. I think a Fleet Willie is a sneaky one wherever he shows up again. I would certainly consider using him, if not picking him, depending on, obviously, the other sort of variables. Who else is in the race? How far is it? Where is it? Etc. Diversify, the last horse we'll touch on briefly before we turn the page and move on to the next race that we'll talk about. Rick Violet even said it. This was a baffling effort from this horse. No excuse, because he came back and everything was fine, and he's checked out okay. Violet said the third turn might, this is a quote, the third turn might have just gotten to him. It looked like he may have surrendered. He's got a little of that in him. That's not necessarily a positive quality to have, a little bit of quit, but at the same time, I suppose maybe that's an excuse. I'm going to be a little bit kinder and say perhaps it was the third turn, or perhaps it was just when the real running started, he was a little bit short. This is his first start since the Clark Handicap last year. He is a Grade 1 winner, but it must be noted most of his career has been kept in New York bred company, so there's a reason that it took them as long as it did to try open company. I think this is a really talented horse still. I certainly would not rule him out wherever he were to show up next. Again, you got to take a look and see what fields look like. But Diversify, I'm going to just give him the benefit of the doubt and say draw a line through this one, whether it was the racetrack, whether he needed a race, or just maybe he didn't want to run. I don't know if he did end up quitting. I'm going to wait and see. If he comes back in a race up at Belmont, something a little bit more suited for his running style and more familiar territory, I think I would give him the benefit of the doubt. But no question about it, a really, really fun race to watch. The stretch run was tremendous. Something Awesome gets the better of War Story. They both run bang-up races. Something Awesome wins the Charlestown Classic with a 101 Beyer speed figure and a 127 Timeform US rating.